Rob, questions from our webinar attendees.
Indeed. Fast and furious. We're probably not going to get through them all, so I'll try and do a bit of rapid fire. Now, we haven't had an opportunity to feature all of our sponsors because too many, etc. I'm going to give the first question to a sponsor. This is Bernie Edwards from Hubblesoft. You can find a link to Hubblesoft on the main website. And it's, for those of us who haven't served, I'm just intrigued, a general, what's it like being a police officer during COVID? The police have an almost impossible job and are an easy target. It's just, I thought it was a lovely
I'll
question.
throw that question at the chiefs. Matt, Bill, Andy, would you like to have a go at that?
There are colleagues closer to the front line who'll give a more, more compelling and authentic answer to it, I suspect. So Sam and James might do a better job of it. But can I just say this? I think our staff and officers have done an amazing job.
I agree.
I've got colleagues who have moved out of home so that they can shield a vulnerable relative and still do their work in communities. And all the time knowing that not only is their every action going to be potentially, filmed on the smartphone and subject to that kind of social media scrutiny, but actually it's been a real kind of Goldilocks period for policing, to get it just right, to not do too much, to not do too little, to be seen to be supporting communities. I think has been a challenge which, through really good common sense and the great skills and experience of our people, cops have done a fantastic job. But they're also human beings, and so they're juggling everything that goes on with homeschooling, elderly parents, worry about other work that affects other members of their family. So, they've done a brilliant job, I think, but they've done it despite all the same challenges that everyone else is facing. And I reckon Sam and James would probably tell us more, more convincingly what it's actually like.
Sam, James?
I think that's super convincing.
Summarised it pretty nicely, really.
Go on, put you on the spot now.
Okay, so obviously we're from Devon, Cornwall, so probably most of you have seen the news in relation to Woolwickham, the beaches. I think each part of the country has faced different challenges. I think that's fair to say, and different roles within policing probably face different challenges. And we've all, we are all human. We've got the homeschooling thing, which I'm not even going to start on the homeschooling issue. There's a reason I'm not a teacher, and I think it'll be the same. So yeah, I mean, all joking aside, each area faces its own unique difficulties. And I think in Devon and Cornwall, the issues that we faced was the lockdown lifts, and everyone seems to want to descend on the country, the rural areas, which obviously the other forces across the country have faced. But specifically the beaches, there was a real desire to come down to the beaches. So from a personal point of view, that was quite challenging to manage, because I think the general population wanted to come and just experience a little bit of a let up and come back into nature, really. So managing that was quite tricky. Obviously we had colleagues that were shielding in caravans on their drive, people that were looking to rent holiday cottages nearby so they could come away from their families. So all those kind of challenges, which you've already alluded to, were definitely present here.
There's a very difficult balance to be struck between the expectation and the needs of the community that you serve in the area you're in, who for the most part we're seeing all these people coming to the area we're in and not wanting them to be here. But then equally the understanding that the people who are coming here were coming from areas where they could have been locked down for months on end in a flat or an apartment or in the middle of the city with no access to parks or the outdoors. And of course, they're going to want to get out into the natural environment whenever the opportunity came, as soon as it came. And then for the large part, a lot of them needed to as well, because we know from the stuff. Go on, yeah.
Just say, Andy, can I just ask you that question? Because obviously Merseyside's very much under the focus at the moment with the current situation. What's your experience of within Merseyside and your staff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say we've had excellent support from the public throughout it, which has been really useful. That has been down to the excellent work done not just in Merseyside but across the country by the approach our officers and staff have taken to doing this, because it's really important that we retain the consent of the public through it. So it's not been a case of instructing staff or asking staff to throw tickets out left, right and centre. It's very much about engaging and educating the public in relation to it. That can only go on for so long. There is general fatigue in relation to the whole COVID situation now. And I think now that we're at the highest level in the Liverpool City region, we are seeing some significant resistance to the way we are policing it, more directed towards politicians than policing. I mean, the support for policing, last national survey, 91% of people supported the way the police have actually dealt with the COVID situation. But it's getting tougher and tougher, and there'll be more and more regions going into the highest tier level over the next weeks and months, undoubtedly. So it's very much about continuing with that rehearsed approach of being part of our public, not working it to our public, and making sure we enforce where necessary to keep that public health where it needs to be, but we do it in the best traditions of British policing, which is as part of our community. It's been tough for my staff, like everyone else. They've got families they're worried about. They've got older relatives they're worried about as part of this. And despite that, right throughout this pandemic, like the National Health Service and others, they've been coming to work in great numbers to keep people safe. And that does give you a real sense of pride in being part of a wider team who've done an absolutely fantastic job and are now going to be asked to do it for a lot longer.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Thank you. Rob.
Okay, how do you see the police service working with businesses to support the health and wellbeing agenda?
Again, I'll go back to our panel. Would one of you like to pick that one up? Matt, Bill, or Andy?
Well, I was going to say, if I, as a sort of partnership lead, if I say a few words about that, and then clearly kind of Matt and Andy, happy to kind of hear views as well. I suppose there are two parts to this. One is the very kind of practical and real support that businesses can give in this forum, so as sponsors, as helping to engage with the TeamPolice activity, because what this helps to do is it's going to help us channel financial support via donations towards the Police Support UK activity, which will be supporting forces, individuals, teams, and initiatives right across the England and Wales, and indeed beyond that to the participants in Scotland and Northern Ireland. And so that's one practical way, and this is really one of the initiatives that we're trying to take forward, is developing this relationship with the private sector in order to help support that work that we're doing. I suppose the other way is, and I've mentioned a bit already, that a lot of organisations have got their own view as to how they support wellbeing within their workforce, and also how they support and prompt wellbeing in the kind of community. So if you take someone like the cooperative, the co-op are involved in many communities across the country, supporting not just the well-being of their workforce, but also things like sponsoring, going for park runs, going for walks. I know that in Lincolnshire, they are the principal organiser of walking activity for predominantly elderly, but for all age groups. So I think initially, Gavin, there's kind of two aspects where we're looking to seek strong engagement with businesses. One around sharing the learning and what they are doing as partners within wellbeing, and secondly, directly with the TeamPolice activity to help fund donations towards police support and wellbeing.
Thank you, Bill. I just at this point just want to bring in either Natalie, Rob, or Ben, obviously, who are our principal sponsors for this webinar, because each of you referenced, your rationale for your organisations coming in to support this. Again, it'd be helpful to, as Bill just said, is there any practice or any things that you're doing in your organisations that we could learn from or pick up from?
Hi, Gavin, it's Natalie. We talked earlier about mental health, and we're actually putting together a mental health ally volunteer programme at XPS. so that there will be a group of people who are based all over the country. At the moment, the majority of us are working from home. But if we do get back to our original normal, not the new normal that we're living in now, it would be great to think that we had at least 1 or 2 people in every office around the country, and we've got 15 of them, who we could turn to in the event that we wanted to talk about something really, really confidential that is affecting our mental health. And that could be something at work, something at home, something that has affected our home life because we're working too hard. And that's something that we're introducing at XPS over the next couple of months.
That's interesting. Thank you, Natalie.
That's a pleasure.
Ben, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to say, very happy to share more. I know, it's more of a responsibility for our HR department, but who own the strategy. But we've done a lot of things internally, and the support they've given us during COVID has been absolutely superb. We've signed up to the Mind mental health at work commitment. We've got discussion guides for managers. We have people trained as mental health first aiders. We also have a wellbeing portal, and we've got a confidential support line that any employee can phone 24/7 to discuss anything that they want. So there's a whole range of things that we're doing internally. Be happy to share in more detail.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, likewise, Gavin.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. And Rob, obviously you mentioned earlier, very much in the sort of the front line as such with Police Credit Union and colleagues. Is there anything from PSU?
Yeah, so what we're seeing is a lot of data being driven with regard to the use of payday loans and high interest credit with our members. Not particularly actually the serving officers, because obviously their jobs haven't been affected by COVID, but a lot of their family members that are being affected by like potential redundancies, etc. So they're struggling to pay their bills, which is definitely a financial stress for them. We've linked up with numerous welfare and benevolent funds within various forces. We're working with them to try and help. We've surveyed quite a few regional forces and realised that about 60% of a lot of their welfare fund applications are for debt consolidation or expenses. So what we're trying to do is help with that in that respect, providing like affordable loans. So it actually frees up more money for genuine welfare cases. So it can help more people. So that's the route we're going down, and it seems to be working very well.
Really interesting.
So yeah, there's lots of avenues that are developing, as a result of COVID. So we're just trying to play our part really to show our support where we can.
Thank you, Rob. Rob, any questions?
Next one. Yeah, loads and loads. In Hertfordshire, police officers saying they follow Mind as well, like been mentioned a few times. Blue Light Program, mental health first aiders. Very interested in working TeamPolice on that. Now, I've got a question here I'm going to pick out. Do you think that the decline of sports and social clubs has had a detrimental effect on staff welfare?
It's a good question, actually. Being somebody who's really old and was in the service in the early 80s when I joined the local sports and social club. Matt, have you got a thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the first thing to say is the experience around the country is slightly varied, but it's probably more or less what you describe and more or less what Bill described earlier. So in the past, we might have central facilities, in a force maybe the size of mine here, or my first force in South Yorkshire has got quite a good facility in Sheffield, but it was never that accessible to people who were in Doncaster, for example. So actually, we're seeing less maybe activity through those central facilities. The Met has still got its sports clubs, and Tallyho in West Mids is probably a standout example now of the kind of facility that still exists. So largely they've shrunk away, and the membership to some extent. But as has been recognised in some of the chat, I think what's come behind maybe some of that, less people playing hockey or cricket or playing bowls or coming to the bar. The clubs now are, some of the really active clubs are moving more of their offer online. So they're doing a lot more sports and social. They're doing a lot of discount schemes. They're working with local national retailers and local employee benefits, national employee benefits packages. So I think they're changing, but I also think habits are changing. And if you look at patterns around team sport generally, I think you'll see that there's less participation generally in those traditional, not all of them, but in many of those traditional sports. People want to go to the gym. They're into the kind of park run style running. They're into getting on their bikes and keeping in touch with each other on Strava. And actually what's happened is, as some of those other traditional things have fallen away, we've brought online, so quite a busy triathlon section, and CrossFit is the one that took me by surprise. We had who knew what a CrossFit throwdown was? I didn't. we had the PS UK CrossFit throwdown last year. I think it's just the second. And what really struck me about CrossFit is it's kind of functional fitness that's actually really relevant to the policing. It's the kind of sprinting short distances and then wrestling people on the ground. It's that kind of fitness. So we're evolving. Has it had an impact on morale? I think, as I say, I think lifestyles have changed and people don't be engaged in the same way anyway. But I do think the best examples are where the clubs have either evolved and where some of that, how do people live a lot of their social life now? Social media. And so I think one thing, Bill and Andy and others and I need to sort of find our level is we need to be comfortable with people having a work-based social media life as well, which I know we get a bit anxious about on occasions, but all I can see on these Facebook groups that exist for us is people really supporting each other and being positive. So maybe they have changed. They're not what they were when the Chiefs on the Call started, but the good ones are evolving, and I think that's what we want to see continue.
Yeah, I think, Gavin, I would just echo and add to what Matt said. As long as that doesn't mean you're putting any pictures of yourself in Lycra, Matt, on social media, we definitely don't want any of that. But I think the offer is changing, has changed. So if the question was about the bars, the clubs having a licensed premises and that being a focal point for the kind of networking that officers and staff would do, and that was the kind of hub around which some sort of sporting activity would take place, that has gone essentially just about everywhere. But the offer that we need to bring in, and we have been bringing over the last 2 or 3 years, I suppose, in earnest, is a different one. And that's where things that Matt has already said, things like encouraging your staff to take part in the 10,000 steps challenges, take part in park runs, have a different network and a different outlet for coming together as a group, as a family, as an organization. And I think because of that, and because of the advantages that different and new ways of making offers provides, that offers new opportunity as well for working with others. I don't think realistically the ideas around what was fit for the past are going to be fit for us in the future. And that, rather than looking at that as a negative because of the halcyon days of when we had bars in police stations, actually it's the positive about what the future offers us and how we can reach far more people and actually encourage a healthier lifestyle as a result. So I definitely support what Matt's given by his way of analysis of it.
Really interesting. Rob, more questions, please.
Well, I want to build on that by linking on 2 questions. Excellent one from Rob Lovesey just now, and one from a lifetime police golfer who should remain anonymous, apart from those of us who know him, and then that'll be obvious. But from Rob, we know officers and staff face challenges regarding their irregular shift patterns, with the balance of home and work life already a strain. Add sport into that equation. Being a husband, father of 2 young children myself, how do you expect people to find time to prioritize it? Do you feel there's more that can be done by each force to support it, to help those find time for police sport? And if so, how? So now on to the golfers. What are forces doing to support and encourage staff to participate in sport and physical activities by means of special leave, time off, etc.? For example, some forces give up to 5 days special leave while others give no time to staff. You have to use your own annual leave. Would it be possible for forces across the UK to agree a minimum amount, still leaving discretionary time for each force?
Interesting one. This is I can remember the throwback to when I was in the job, when time was given for sport, but as we've already touched upon, I think times have moved on. But Matt, Bill, Andy, you'd like to pick that up?
Be interesting. I mean, Andy, all joking aside, Andy and I probably both been around this a long time and had the benefits. So I've I played a lot of rugby on Wednesday afternoons back in the day. And did less police work on Wednesday afternoons than even I do now. So we took the paper that I described to Chiefs Council, and I think this is the one area where there's a wider spread of opinion. But I think what we've landed is a general sense that for people who are going to take part in a few things each year, who are going to be ambassadors for the service, that generally chiefs up and around the country are making some kind of accommodation. Some of it quite often boils down to local practice and custom. And to be frank, we found it easier to encourage that rather than once you start writing it down, the risk is you start pinning people to the lowest common denominator. But on the point that was made about how, so I think we'll keep that conversation going, but I think to be realistic that it will always now be a combination of, and it always has been, I guess, but particularly now at some of your own time. I think in terms of keeping fit for the job, I think that's an interesting, different question, which we maybe need to keep all more open-minded to, because if you look at the military comparison, and particularly, you'd argue firefighting, other emergency services, there's an expectation that that will be part of your working week, is you'll get some time to do that. And I know Bill has made provision in his for some wellbeing time. Some of it can be focused on fitness. So I think that's a conversation to keep live. I know Andy Ray's perhaps is still on, but we'd certainly want to encourage an open-mindedness to that. And we know how difficult it is for colleagues who have not been able to, for a host of reasons, stay fit, how difficult it can be to come back from that. So with people particularly who are having challenges with things like fitness testing, we should be being really open-minded to that kind of social prescribing sort of model of helping people back to wellness. So that's just my take on it. I think the days of, I guess my, 2 and 3 day, trips to do sport and so on of the past, maybe less so, but more of a partnership between the force and the sports people, I guess.
You mentioned police. Go on. Sorry.
I was glad, Gavin, very briefly. Yeah, I mean, I think Matt described it well, but what we were saying a bit earlier is that actually we understand the health impacts of that work brings to our people in the organisation, and there's something about the employer responsibility of trying to offset that, to mitigate that, as well as that we've already got a kind of requirement, as Matt alluded to there, to meet a certain minimum level of fitness, so that you can take part in the duties of a police officer and a PCSO. So there's something about this conversation does need to be kept going. There's lots of stuff that people are doing, and people mentioned mental health mentors and champions. Fitness mentors, that's something that we've got in Lincolnshire. I know other forces have as well. I know Andy and Ian Hesketh on this webinar are keen to pursue that from an Oscar Kilo point of view, the national OK programme for police wellbeing, and that we're trying to encourage people in work time as well as in their own private time to look after their kind of physical health and all other aspects of their health. But one other part is pushing against government. One of the reasons that comes up at Chiefs Council when we meet as senior leaders to discuss this very point is how well the senior leader feels that they are being supported by government in things like the press and the media. Because why would a chief not support someone for for having work time off. Well, when there's a picture then put in the Daily Mail or something else which criticises what those officers are doing, and then there's no support coming from, say, a national government or a national voice to say, you know what, that's okay, that is part of the commitment. So nobody bats an eye at the military being seen to be involved in something like games or other sporting activity. That's just seen as part and parcel of their commitment. And yet, if it was the police, we would get the questions about why you're not out keeping the streets safe. So I think there is something about us also being able to have a coherent engagement with government over the levels of support they give to chief constables who make decisions about supporting their workforce.
Yeah, a very good point. Thank you, Bill. Matt, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to come in on a related point around time. I should also say on that point about the so often called Daily Mail test, that having appeared next to the headline, Chief of Britain's Sickest Police Force says, get on your bike, I'll think about how I promote active travel again in the future. You say, Bill's sort of making the point that, I quite literally, talking positively about promoting cycling to work, and it gets that kind of headline.
Yeah.
It did get that kind of headline, so we're no longer Britain's sickest police force, I should say, as well, if we ever were. But I just wanted to make the point about time, because the one thing that we've bumped up against here is we've done a lot to be flexible. So if you're in the Couch to 5K group, to make sure you can get out from the workplace and meet your Couch to 5K team. If you're working at headquarters, that you can go out and walk the block to get your 10,000 steps. The trick for all of us is, what do you do for the 24-hour-a-day response team? What do you do for the cop who's on nights in Swansea tonight? Because they can't break. I'm sure it's the same for James and Sam and other colleagues, frontline colleagues on the meeting. It's not easy to get a meal break, let alone go and get in the gym on a lot of shifts. So I think the challenge, and I've got no silver bullet for that, other than to say I think it's something which we're really locked onto, which is, how do we make sure that actually the people who do, in some sense, the most attritional work in the service have got access to the same support. And that's why I do think, and I'm a fan of workplace gyms, because I think at the very least it gives people the opportunity, either wrapped around or if they can snatch it within their working day, to get some opportunity. But I do think the real challenge is to make it for the whole organisation, particularly those who work 24 hours a day.
Thank you. I'm going to squeeze in one more question, Rob.
Yeah, and I've saved the best one for last, the light-hearted question. So, with the national team sport events, public attendance closed down, for the panelists, which sporting event is at the top of your list to attend when lockdown restrictions are lifted?
I'll bring Andy in on this one first. Andy.
It'll undoubtedly be the next Champions League final, which Liverpool will be in.
Okay, Bill.
Having delightfully be able to go and watch the rugby in Japan, I was pleasantly surprised that when they postponed the Olympics. So you never know. I might now, as I look to next year, be able to go out and see some of the Olympics in Japan again. So I've set the bar high, I'd have to say. That and just participate myself, get back into playing volleyball. It's been my passion for 40 years, but it's all shut down. I haven't been able to train. And if I can get back and start playing myself in terms of some matches, then that would delight me more than anything.
Fantastic. Thanks, Bill. And Matt, something involving Lycra?
Something involving?
Lycra?
Potentially something involving Lycra. I would love to be. I'd love to be back in a boat. I'm a rower. I would just love to be at the start of a park run. That would signal to me that life is back on, something like a track to normality. But for the last 10 years, I've had the great pleasure and privilege of going to when it's come every time it comes round, going to Wales versus England at the Principality Stadium. And, as someone who is
be careful, Matt. Be very careful.
As someone who has been adopted by Wales, is moving back to work in England in the next few months. I'll sit on the fence in terms of who I'll be supporting, but when we're singing the Welsh national anthem back in the Principality Stadium, I'll really know we're back in a good. So lots of luck, and that's why I think this community is so important to keep together, and I'm so grateful for everyone connecting up tonight.
Thank you. Well, I'll finish off there with the questions. We'll try and put the questions together and see what we can do something with that after this webinar. We've had a really good response, actually. But before I wrap it up, Matt, as the chair of PSUK, is there any final words, final remarks from you you'd like to make before I wrap it up?
Just a couple, really. I mean, the first thing to say is I sometimes run up against the concern of people who've been volunteers for decades in relation to police sport, that it's not what it used to be, and it's in a sort of terminal decline. I'm absolutely convinced that that's not the case. For the last couple of years, we've had the really vocal support of chiefs. I've got a handful of chiefs really wanting to get more involved than they really are, and that will make up now a substantial number of people. Bill, Andy, I mean, just take, Andy's right in the middle of a very serious situation and is, giving time to be with us. It's put a huge amount of industry into the work with TeamPolice. So I just wanted to leave those colleagues who are right in the middle of the work and right in the middle of it, or the retired colleagues who've seen it differently before, with a word of hope, really, which is that I believe there's a real future at the heart of the wellbeing strategy for policing, for physical activity, and for sport. We couldn't do it without the volunteers who make that happen, and we certainly won't be able to do it in the future without the support of Sponsored and others. But it's been a special part of, I think, everyone who's involved, been a special part of our service, and we want that not just to continue but to grow.
Well said.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much. Andy, did you want to come in, or
no, other than to fully echo what Matt said, as I'm sure all chiefs will around the country, it's really important to have that support from both volunteers and from our sponsors. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, it just leads me to say a big thank you to everybody who's taken the trouble to sign on and come on this webinar. As I said, this is the first of a series of webinars which TeamPolice with Police Support UK are going to be doing through to June. The next one for your diary is on the 8th of December, Tuesday. I'd also like to thank all our sponsors, and Rob referenced to that. So it's not only our key sponsors for this event, but we've had other sponsors on this webinar as well who are supporting us in this great cause. So a heartfelt thank you for that. And I'd also like to lastly just thank my TeamPolice colleagues for the sheer hard work they put into making this webinar happen. So reminding you all again, 8th of December, be there. It's not to be missed. And just to wish you all, everybody on this webinar, to stay safe and stay well. Thank you.